young woman's hand trembles as she dips a star-quill into liquid starlight. Elara is the new postmaster of the Starglow Post Office, and the fate of our most cherished dreams rests on her first celestial letter. Should she fail, the delicate trust between the dreaming world and the constellations would shatter forever, and the whispers of forgotten stories carried on the night air would be lost. By the end of this journey, you will discover how a single letter can mend the sky and weave our dreams back into the stars. I wonder where in the world you are listening from right now, and what the night looks like outside your window. What do you think it would feel like to hold a piece of the night's magic in your hands? Her first step onto the moonbeam path felt like walking on solidified light. Elara held her breath, the celestial letter cradled in her palms as she extended her hands into the cool embrace of the night. With a whispered release, she let the parchment go, and the waiting night breeze gathered it tenderly. For a heart-stopping moment, it seemed to hover, a single leaf of hope against the infinite dark, before a playful zephyr caught it, spiraling the message upward in a joyful dance. A soft, clear chime rang out from the Starglow Post Office bell far below, a sound that echoed the newfound spark of confidence warming her chest, but triumph was fleeting. A sudden, mischievous gust, sharp and cold from the east wind, shot forward to snatch the letter, twisting the zephyr into a panicked flutter. There was no time for fear, only instinct. Elara closed her eyes and began to sing, her voice a gentle, calming lullaby her grandmother had sung to the evening skies. The ancient melody wove through the turbulent air, smoothing its rough edges and guiding the little zephyr back onto its starlit course. This quiet victory proved her connection to the night's oldest magic, but it also had a cost. From the distant, swirling edges of the constellation Cygnus, a pair of silent, shadowed eyes now watched her every move. The importance of her role magnified instantly, the weight of every future letter feeling infinitely heavier. As the first message finally vanished into the tapestry of stars, a new sheet of paper materialized on her desk. This one hummed with an urgent, unfamiliar energy, its edges flickering with a light that felt like a question. The new letter on her desk did not simply hum. It flickered, its light sputtering like a dying candle flame. Elara gently touched the parchment, and a wave of profound sorrow washed over her. This was a plea from the constellation Lyra, the celestial harp, and its stars were fading, their light seeping away into the emptiness between worlds. A single, essential note from its eternal cosmic song had been lost, stolen away by a careless wind. If she did not find that note before Lyra's final star winked out, its music would be silenced forever, and a part of the sky's harmony would vanish. Her decision was instant. Leaving the Starglow Post Office felt like stepping away from a beating heart. The moment she crossed the threshold, the gentle flow of letters slowed to a trickle. The night air, usually alive with rustling messages and playful breezes, grew heavy and still, thick with an anxious silence. The entire system of celestial mail depended on her presence, and now it was holding its breath. The path to the Whispering Glen was not marked on any map, for it existed only in the echoes of lost sounds. As she entered its misty confines, a swirling cloud of echo bats descended. They did not screech or bite. Instead, they wove around her, their voices a perfect, chilling mimicry of her own deepest fears. "You are not your grandmother," they whispered. You are a failure. The stars will fall because of you. The sky does not trust you. Elara stopped, her heart hammering against her ribs. Running was useless. Hiding was impossible, so she stood her ground, closed her eyes against the taunting shadows, and did the one thing the bats could not mimic. She spoke her own truth. "My name is Elara," she declared, her voice gaining strength with every word. "I am the Postmaster of Starglow, and I carry the dreams of the world to the stars. I believe in the magic of the night, and I will not let it fade." She poured all her hope, all her conviction into those words, and the echo bats fell silent, their power broken by the sheer force of her sincerity. They parted, allowing her safe passage, and for the first time, she felt truly worthy of her title. There, in the very heart of the glen, caught on the thorn of a soundless bell, was the lost note. It was a shimmering sliver of pure vibration. She carefully cupped it in her hands, feeling its music resonate through her bones, and released it back into the air. It soared upward, a single, perfect tone racing home. High above, the stars of Lyra flared back to life, their song restored, richer and more beautiful than before. But victory came at a cost. The effort of the quest left her drained, and when she stumbled back into the Starglow Post Office, she found a crisis waiting. A backlog of letters had piled high on her desk. Some were simply delayed, but others, she noticed with a sinking heart, already bore the same faint, flickering light she had seen on Lyra's plea. The problem was not isolated. Other constellations were beginning to falter, their stability now tied directly to her ability to keep up. The weight of the sky itself seemed to settle onto her shoulders. Rushing to her desk, her hand brushed against the topmost envelope. One particular letter glowed with a faint, sorrowful blue light, a quiet and lonely plea from the steadfast North Star. The North Star's letter felt cold in her hands, its faint blue light pulsing with a deep and quiet loneliness. While other constellations danced and swirled through the night, the North Star remained eternally fixed, a solitary sentinel that never knew the joy of movement. Elara knew no ordinary reply would do. This required a piece of her own heart. Closing her eyes, she reached for her most cherished memory, the night her grandmother first taught her the star songs, their voices harmonizing with a sudden meteor shower. She poured that entire, joyful moment into her hands, weaving it into a tiny, glowing orb of pure feeling. Sending it required a piece of her own spirit, and as the memory left her, a wave of profound weariness washed through her, leaving her feeling hollowed out and exposed. The orb shot upward, a speck of warmth racing toward the distant, frozen point of light. When it reached its destination, the North Star did not simply brighten. It sparkled, its light shifting through a cascade of colors as it experienced, for the first time, the thrill of a cosmic dance. In return for her priceless gift, the star aligned itself, focusing its unwavering light into a steady, silvery beam that illuminated the celestial pathways below. Elara's future delivery routes now shone with a clear, guiding radiance, promising safer and faster journeys through the sky. This act of profound empathy did not go unnoticed. At the very edges of her vision, Elara sensed new presences, ethereal shapes of shifting light and shadow. The dream weavers had taken note, their silent observation adding a new layer of mystery and weight to her role. Just as the North Star's comforting light settled over the post office, a sudden commotion erupted from the letter sorting room. Elara turned to find a bundle of letters from the mighty constellation Orion had arrived, but they were not neatly stacked. They were a tangled, chaotic knot, each envelope wrestling against the others in a frantic, silent struggle. The tangled knot of letters from Orion pulsed with a chaotic, competitive energy. Each envelope strained against the others, their conflicting boasts and challenges, creating a snarl of celestial static. High above, the stars of the great hunter himself flickered erratically, and confused twinkles echoed from neighboring constellations as their crossed messages caused minor misalignments in the heavens. A full-scale celestial argument was brewing, born from a simple lack of clarity. Elara reached for the writhing bundle, but the magical knot tightened, resisting her touch. She understood then that force was useless. The problem was not the paper, but the boastful, restless spirit that had created the tangle in the first place. To calm the letters, she would have to calm Orion himself. She did not try to pull the knot apart. Instead, she sat at her desk, selected a sheet of the calmest, most silvery parchment, and began to write. Her letter was not a command or a plea, but a gesture of deep respect. She praised Orion's legendary strength and the brightness of his stars, but she gently suggested that true greatness was shown not in many loud challenges, but in a few clear and honorable words. She sent her own humble message off with the knotted bundle, a single voice of reason amidst the chaos. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then, a wave of quiet, focused stillness washed down from the constellation. Orion, touched by her diplomacy, had consciously reigned in his own rambunctious energy. The magical knot, soothed by this sudden calm, loosened of its own accord. The letters gracefully untangled, each one floating serenely to begin its intended journey. The crisis was averted, but Elara's understanding of her role had forever changed. She was not just a postmaster, but a peacemaker. The weight of this new diplomatic duty settled alongside the physical one, raising the stakes of every future delivery. Just as harmony returned to the sky above, a tiny, frantic letter zipped into the office. It was not from a constellation, but from a lone firefly, its own miniature light message undelivered because it had lost its way in the vastness of the night. The tiny firefly trembled on her desk, his light sputtering with each panicked breath. His name was Flick, and the message he carried for the evening star was a faint, golden speck, no larger than a grain of sand, already fading into the gloom. Elara knew that no constellation could rid a plea so dim. To save it, she would have to make it shine. Her gaze fell upon the post office's main lantern, a great, swirling orb of captured starlight that powered the entire celestial mail system. Borrowing even a sliver of its light was a profound risk. She reached for the lantern, her fingers hovering as she gently coaxed a single, radiant thread from its core. The moment the starlight left the lantern, the entire room dimmed. The letters waiting on her desk, which usually glowed with eager light, now pulsed with a faint, sleepy luminescence. Their journey into the sky would be slower, more cautious, until the power was returned. Every second she spent with Flick was a delay for every other dream in the room. The transfer of light was a painstaking process. She had to weave the brilliant starlight thread into Flick's own fragile glow without overwhelming it. A sudden, cold draft swept through the post office, and Flick's light guttered, nearly vanishing into a wisp of smoke. Elara did not hesitate. She cupped her hands around the tiny messenger, creating a protective dome, and leaned forward. With the softest, steadiest breath she could muster, she exhaled a warm, constant stream of air, shielding Flick from the turbulent world outside. Her own breath became a cocoon of stillness, a pocket of calm in the anxious night. Inside that safe space, she continued her work, her focus absolute, her patience endless, until the starlight thread merged completely with Flick's core. The little firefly flared to life, his body now a steady, brilliant beacon. The message for the evening star shone with a clear, unmistakable gold, and Flick zipped away into the night, his delivery swift and true. His success did not go unrewarded. The next evening, Flick returned not alone, but with his entire family, a swirling constellation of living lights at the post office door. In gratitude, they offered their services as emergency messengers, a swift new network for the most urgent of night mail. Elara's world had just grown larger, her resources richer, but the weight of coordinating this new, living system settled firmly upon her. As the first fireflies took their assignments, zipping away with tiny, glowing letters, a deep, melodic hum resonated through the post office, a single, resonant note that could only have come from the fully restored strings of the constellation Lyra. The deep, resonant hum from Lyra's strings did not simply fade away. It coalesced into a shimmering scroll that materialized directly above her desk, unfurling with a cascade of soft, harmonious light. This was no ordinary letter. It was a formal invitation from the constellation Lyra itself, announcing a grand celestial concert, a gathering meant to weave the music of the spheres back into a joyous symphony. Elara's task was monumental. She was to deliver this singular, glowing invitation to every major constellation in the night sky, personally ensuring each one received its summons. The journey would take her from one horizon to the other, a path across the entire expanse of heaven. To accept meant leaving the Starglow Post Office, placing its delicate operations into the care of the playful night zephyrs. Could they handle the routine deliveries without her steadying presence? They had never been solely responsible before, and the thought of the fragile dream letters piling up or going astray sent a tremor of doubt through her. The sheer scale of the sky was overwhelming. How could one person possibly reach every corner in time? Her own stamina felt as finite as a single candle flame against the immense dark. Yet, the invitation's light pulsed with a hopeful energy she could not ignore. She made a decision, one of strategy and trust. Unrolling a map of the heavens, she began to chart a course, her finger tracing a route from constellation to constellation. She leveraged the North Star's unwavering, silvery beam, using it as her fixed point to navigate the swirling star fields. Then she summoned Flick and his family of Firefly Messengers, assigning them as her swift, coordinating scouts. They would zip ahead, confirming paths and carrying brief updates back to the zephyrs at the post office. This was her first true test of delegation, a plan that showed her growing from a simple postmaster into a true celestial conductor. As she embarked on her journey, the true importance of the concert became clear. At each stop, from the regal lion to the graceful swan, the constellations revealed a shared, quiet melancholy that had settled over the heavens. The concert was not merely a performance. It was a vital remedy, a collective effort to raise the spirits of the cosmos itself. With every invitation she placed into the hands of a star being, she felt the weight of that hope transfer to her own shoulders. The emotional state of the entire night now depended on the success of her mission. While placing the final invitation into the hands of the ancient, slow-moving turtle constellation, she paused to catch her breath. It was then that she overheard two older, twinkling stars whispering just above her. Their voices were laced with a fear far deeper than any melancholy. They were not worried about the concert, but about the great comet, due to pass through the sky very soon. It had a long and troubling history, they murmured, of causing terrible disruptions wherever its fiery tail swept. The whispers of the great comet coiled through the heavens like a cold dread. Elara abandoned her celestial route to investigate, seeking out the oldest and wisest stars who remembered the comet's last passing. They spoke of a tale not of fire, but of pure, chaotic energy, a force that could scatter starlight into meaningless glitter and unravel the very pathways she had worked so hard to illuminate. The grand celestial concert, a fragile hope for cosmic harmony, would be the first thing shattered by its passage. Her quiet investigation, however, sent tremors through the constellations she had so recently comforted. Worried letters began to arrive at the Starglow Post Office, their light tinged with a frantic, fearful blue. The sky itself was holding its breath, waiting for her to speak. She knew that uncertainty bred more fear than any truth, so she sat at her desk, selected a parchment woven from moonbeams for its clarity, and began to write a Universal Bulletin. She did not hide the comet's power or its inevitability. Instead, she explained its nature as a natural, if turbulent, traveler, and she detailed her immediate plan to temporarily reroute all mail through the safest, most shielded star lanes, with the Firefly Messengers acting as agile scouts. She promised transparency and her unwavering vigilance. Dispatching this letter was an act of profound trust. The effect was immediate. The anxious twinkling across the constellations softened into a steadier, more resolved glow. Her honesty had calmed the heavens, but it had also bound her with a promise she now had to fulfill. The distant speck of the comet was no longer a silent worry. It was now a visible point of light in the deep black, and with each passing hour, its flickering grew more pronounced, a taunting pulse of approaching chaos. She had bought herself time and trust, but the solution remained out of reach. Then, in the quiet of the post office, she remembered the ethereal watchers, the dream weavers. An ancient tale her grandmother told surfaced in her mind, speaking of their deep understanding of the fundamental patterns that held reality together. If anyone knew how to safeguard order from chaos, it would be them. Leaving a note for the zephyrs, she stepped away from the known sky and toward the veiled edge of the waking world, where dreams are spun from silence and hope. The path to the Vale of Dreams was not a path at all, but a gradual softening of the world. The sharp pinpoints of starlight blurred into a gentle, shimmering haze, and the familiar constellations melted away into a realm of flowing color and silent sound. Elara found herself standing in a vast, quiet space, where the very air seemed to be woven from shifting tapestries of light. These were the dream weavers, ethereal beings who spun the stories that would become the dreams of the world. They moved with a slow, deliberate grace, their forms impossible to define, paying her no more mind than they would a passing thought. She had to make them listen. Stepping forward, she began to speak, her voice small against the immense quiet. She explained the threat of the great comet, the fragile concert, the network of hopes she was sworn to protect. The weavers did not turn. Instead, the air around her shifted. A vision unfolded before her eyes. She saw the Starglow Post Office dark and empty, its bell silent. She saw letters turning to dust in her hands and stars, one by one, winking out into a permanent and lonely blackness. The fear she had battled in the Whispering Glen returned, amplified 1,000-fold. This was not a test of her strength, but of her heart. Demanding help would have been useless, so she did the only thing she could. She let the vision wash over her, and she spoke her truth into the silence. "My greatest fear is failing them," she confessed, her voice trembling with a raw honesty she had never shown anyone. "I am just one person. I get tired, I feel lonely, and I am so often afraid. But I believe in the connections I carry. I want to protect the dreams of the world and the stories of the stars, not for glory, but because they matter." The weaving around her stilled. One of the dream weavers turned, its formless attention focusing on her completely. It had heard the purity in her words, the selfless core of her plea. In a voice that felt like a shared memory, it agreed. They would weave a temporary canopy, a shield crafted from the most resilient dream stuff, to protect the major starlight paths during the comet's passing. This alliance was a gift beyond measure, but it came with an unspoken weight. She was now bound to the realm of dreams, a guardian of both the waking night and the sleeping world. With a renewed sense of purpose, Elara returned to the Starglow Post Office, the image of the Protective Canopy already taking shape in the minds of the weavers. But the comet's influence was already creeping into the edges of reality. There, just outside the main window, a single enchanted letter was frozen solid in a beam of erratic, pulsing light. It hung motionless in the air, its journey violently interrupted, a stark warning that time was running out faster than anyone had anticipated. The frozen letter hung in the air like a captured teardrop, its delicate paper encased in a prison of jagged, crystalline light. It was a wish from a little girl, a simple, heartfelt plea to see her grandmother in her dreams, and now it was the epicenter of a spreading void. Around the suspended message, a patch of silent space was growing, a sphere of absolute stillness, where the gentle rustle of traveling dreams was utterly extinguished. If she did not act, this pocket of nothingness would expand, severing more and more of the celestial pathways. Elara knew she could not reach it from the ground. She had to climb, a starlight ladder, woven from the same solidified light as the moonbeam path, materialized before her, its rungs shimmering with a fragile luminescence. Each step upward was a test of nerve. The crystallized comet light encasing the letter was not just cold, it was actively hostile, its sharp edges catching the ladder's glow and fracturing it into dangerous, blinding shards. One wrong move, one slip of her foot, and she could shatter the letter or the ladder itself, sending her tumbling into the endless, dreaming void below. High above, the great comet grew larger, its approach now a tangible pressure on the back of her neck. Reaching the frozen message, she did not try to break the ice. Instead, she drew from her pocket a soft, warm cloth, a gift from the dream weavers woven from the gentle light of a crescent moon. She wrapped the cloth around the crystalline prison, her movements slow and deliberate, her breath held. This was not a task for force, but for warmth and patience. She poured her own hope into the moonbeam weave, a steady, gentle heat that did not scorch, but soothe. The chaotic comet light resisted, its sharp angles pressing against the soft fabric, but the patience of the moon was infinite. With a soft, musical chime, the crystalline prison dissolved into a harmless mist of glittering vapor. The little girl's letter, now free, pulsed once with a warm, golden light, and then shot away into the night, its path straight and true toward the dreaming world. The silent space around it vanished, the familiar rustle of night mail returning in a grateful whisper, but her victory was underscored by a new and immediate danger. As she descended the final rungs of the ladder, the first shimmering particles of the comet's tail began to brush the upper atmosphere, and deep below her feet, the Starglow Post Office itself began to tremble, its very foundations of solidified night air groaning under the strain. The floor of the Starglow Post Office shuddered beneath her feet, a deep groan rising from its foundation of compressed night air. The comet's chaotic energy was unraveling the very atmosphere the building stood upon, threatening to scatter its walls like dandelion fluff. Elara raced to the central pillar, where the post office's core swirled with captured starlight. She had to act immediately. With focused intent, she drew thick, solid beams of light from the core, driving them like glowing stakes into the shifting floor and trembling walls. It was a desperate, exhausting process, each beam a drain on the very power that fueled every letter and every journey. The light in the room noticeably dimmed, the addresses on waiting envelopes growing faint and harder to read. New tremors constantly rippled through the structure, threatening to knock the beams loose, forcing her to scramble and reinforce her work again and again, a frantic battle against the sky's growing instability. She knew she could not save everything. With a heavy heart, she issued a silent command through the post office's magic, pausing all non-essential mail. Only the most critical, soul-deep messages would be processed, their faint light a priority in the gloom. The building finally stilled, secured for now, but the cost was immense. A backlog of smaller, yet still heartfelt, wishes now sat in darkness, and from the edges of her awareness, she sensed a faint, disappointed murmur from the constellations whose routine comforts were delayed. The comet loomed larger than ever, its passage now a matter of hours. Just as the last beam settled into place, a coordinated flash of light appeared at the window. Flick and his entire family of fireflies had arrived, their formation a brilliant, living signal. The Dreamweaver's protective canopy was now shielding the primary star paths, a fragile shield of dream stuff, now the only thing standing between celestial harmony and total chaos. A shimmering net of dream stuff settled over the heavens, its strands glistening like captured dewdrops. The protective canopy was finally in place, but its strength was an unproven theory. Elara knew she could not trust the safety of every dream to a hope. She selected a single, robust letter destined for the constellation Cassiopeia, a route that would take it directly through the comet's most turbulent wake. With a whispered prayer to the night, she released it. The letter soared upward, a brave little vessel entering a storm of silver and gold. For a terrifying moment, it was swallowed by the chaotic light, but then it emerged on the other side, its glow steady and true, zipping safely toward the waiting queen of the sky. A collective, silent sigh of relief seemed to ripple through the starlight above. The major pathways were secure, yet her relief was short-lived. Her eyes traced the edges of the magnificent canopy and saw the gaps. Dozens of smaller, more remote star lanes, the routes to isolated and lonely constellations, lay completely exposed. A small but significant pile of letters on her desk began to glow with a forlorn, flickering light. These stars would receive no protection, and their messages would be lost to the chaos. She looked from the safe, illuminated paths to the vulnerable letters, and her decision was instant. She would not abandon a single one. Fetching a heavy, leather satchel reinforced with beams of solidified starlight, she began to load the remote mail. She was going out into the storm herself. This choice meant stepping beyond the safety of the Dreamweaver's net and directly into the comet's diffuse outer tail, a realm of unpredictable energy currents that could scatter her thoughts as easily as they could scatter light. The personal risk was immense, a gamble with her very existence. As she fastened the final clasp on the mail satchel, the great comet itself crested the horizon. Its core was a brilliant, searing white, and its tail unfurled across the entire sky in breathtaking, terrifying waves of liquid silver and shimmering gold. The great comet's core was a silent, screaming sun as it reached its closest point to the celestial pathways. Elara took a final, steadying breath and stepped onto the most exposed star path, a thin silver thread leading into the heart of the storm. Immediately, the comet's energy seized her. Swirling vortices of cosmic dust stung her eyes, and waves of disorienting light washed over her, each one a dizzying cascade of silver and gold that threatened to erase her sense of direction. Every step was a battle against invisible pulling currents that tried to sweep her feet from the path into the waiting void below. The mail satchel, heavy with hope, felt like an anchor trying to drag her down. Then a particularly violent gust, a concentrated blast of solar wind from the comet's very tail, slammed into her. The force was immense, and the satchel's strap tore from her numb fingers. For one heart-stopping moment, the entire bundle of remote letters lifted, about to be scattered into the glittering chaos forever. Instinct, woven with a recent memory, took over. She wrapped the leather strap tightly around her wrist, the rough material biting into her skin, and with her other hand, she formed a prayer knot in the air, a simple, looping gesture the Dreamweavers had shown her. It was not a physical anchor, but a symbolic act of faith, a declaration that she would not let go. A surge of resilient energy, drawn from the realm of dreams themselves, flowed down her arm. She held on, her entire body trembling with the strain, and pulled the satchel back securely against her chest. The immediate danger passed, but the effort left her utterly drained, her energy spent like a last, flickering candle. She had secured the mail, but a quick, frantic check confirmed her fear. She had only delivered half of the remote letters. The comet was now at its peak intensity, its light so brilliant it felt solid, and the most dangerous part of her journey lay directly ahead. Pushing forward through the dazzling storm, she squinted into the swirling abyss and saw it. The first of her isolated destinations, the Little Fox, was a cluster of faint, trembling stars, their light dimmed and frightened by the comet's terrifying passage. The Little Fox Constellation was huddled into a trembling ball of faint light, its stars mere embers against the comet's roaring brilliance. Elara's own breath hitched in sympathy as she unsealed its letter. The words were simple, a child's whispered wish for the courage to face the first day of school. This was not a message to be handed over, it was one to be shared. Summoning the last of her strength, she began to read the letter aloud. "You are braver than you know," she called out, her voice amplified by the comet's own charged atmosphere, weaving through the chaos like a silver thread. "You can face anything that comes." As she spoke the final, encouraging word, the fox's stars did not just brighten. They straightened, pulling themselves up from their fearful crouch, their light pulsing with a newfound, steady resolve. Their collective courage pushed back against the storm, creating a small, perfectly calm pocket around them, a silent sanctuary in the roaring sky. Gratefully, Elara sank into this momentary peace, her body trembling with exhaustion. The act of projecting her voice had scraped her throat raw and drained the final dregs of her energy. The thought of moving on to the next delivery felt utterly impossible. Her hand went to a small pouch at her belt, her fingers closing around a single, dense crystal of stored starlight, her only emergency ration for the perilous journey home. Using it now meant there was no safety net, no reserve for the return, but there would be no return trip if she failed here. She made the choice, consuming the crystal in one quick, decisive motion. A surge of warmth flooded her veins, clearing her mind and steadying her limbs, but the emptiness of her pouch was a stark reminder of the gamble she had just made. The little fox's transformation, however, was a fuel of its own. Its brave new light was a living testament that her mission mattered. With a deep, steadying breath drawn from that pocket of calm, she turned her gaze further into the storm, toward the distant, graceful arcs of the sailing ship, a constellation famed for navigating the wildest celestial seas. The sailing ship's letter was a map of pure mathematics, its surface etched with shimmering stellar coordinates that twisted and turned like a tangle of glowing threads. This was not a simple wish, but a complex navigational chart for avoiding cosmic storms, and the very storm they needed to escape was churning around them now, its silver gold waves crashing against the ship's luminous hull. Elara held the letter up, her eyes straining to follow the intricate data streams, but the numbers blurred and swam in the comet's disorienting light. A single misread coordinate could send them spiraling into a newly forming vortex, a whirlpool of chaotic energy visible just off the starboard bow. She knew her own knowledge was not enough. The captain star of the sailing ship, a being of calm, ancient light, extended a beam of focused luminescence toward the chart. Elara made a choice in that instant, a quiet surrender of her postmaster's pride. She leaned into the captain's guidance, allowing its innate, centuries-old understanding of celestial currents to flow through her, their combined focus acting like a sextant in the storm. Together, their minds aligned, they traced a path through the shimmering chaos, a route that was not a straight line, but a graceful, looping arc that used the storm's own outer currents to slingshot them to safety. As the sailing ship turned its massive wheel of starlight to follow the new course, the turbulent energy around them suddenly parted. Their coordinated maneuver didn't just save the ship, it carved out a temporary, calm channel in the comet's wake, a clear pathway that now stretched toward Elara's remaining destinations. This was more than a delivery, it was a partnership forged in survival, a bond of trust that promised future collaborations and swifter routes through the heavens. but the clockwork of the cosmos waits for no one. The brilliant core of the great comet was now receding, its main body passing beyond the celestial pathways. The immediate, overwhelming pressure began to ease, but a new threat emerged in its place. The comet's vast, lingering debris field began to drift inward, a slow-moving cloud of glittering, unstable fragments. With a renewed sense of urgency, Elara reached into her nearly empty satchel. Only one letter remained, its parchment feeling strangely heavy and dense. She pulled it out and read the address, her breath catching in her throat. It was for the Silent Turtle, the most remote and ancient constellation, a being who was said to speak only once every 100 years. The Silent Turtle's constellation hung in the void like a patient, ancient carving of stars, its light a deep and weathered bronze. Elara's arrival was met with a rain of ice and dust, the comet's lingering debris pattering against her starlight shield like 1,000 tiny hammers. She unsealed the final letter, her fingers trembling not from fear, but from awe. The parchment held no long message, no complex chart. It bore only a single, resonant word. Peace. Its power was not in its meaning, but in its timing. It had to be delivered in the perfect, crystalline silence between the comet's final roar and the return of the stellar winds, a sliver of time, no wider than a heartbeat. Too soon, and the word would be swallowed by the fading chaos. Too late, and it would be scattered by the resuming flow of the cosmos. She anchored herself on the star path, the debris pinging off her mail satchel, and closed her eyes. She blocked out the clatter of ice, the ache in her muscles, the memory of the storm. Her entire being became an instrument listening for a shift in the cosmic hum, a drop in the pressure of the sky itself. She waited, her breath held, her soul poised, and then it came, not a sound, but an absence. A perfect, profound silence fell across the heavens. In that suspended instant, she released the letter. The single word did not simply travel. It unfolded, blooming from the parchment like a silent, radiant wave. It washed through the turbulent debris field, and each glittering fragment stilled, its chaotic shimmer softening into a gentle, settled glow. It flowed through the constellations, and their anxious twinkling eased into a steady, contented luminescence. A deep, calming peace resonated through every layer of the night, soothing the last vestiges of the comet's discord. The Silent Turtle, a being that spoke only in centuries, slowly blinked its starry eyes at her. In that gaze was an acknowledgement deeper than any praise. She was no longer just a postmaster or a peacemaker. She was a trusted keeper of profound moments, a guardian of the silence where true wisdom could be heard. As the celestial winds began their gentle return, a new letter formed in the air before her, not of parchment, but of woven moonlight and quiet. It was an invitation to rest. The invitation to rest felt as soft as a sigh against her weary soul. Elara drifted into the constellation of the Sleeping Bear, its stars arranged in a gentle, slumbering curve. There, she found a bed waiting for her, a cloud woven from the softest star drift and the echoes of lullabies. As she lay down, the immense fatigue of her battle with the comet settled deep into her bones, and she surrendered to a sleep as profound as the space between galaxies. Her own dreams, fragile and human, began to mingle with the vast, slow dreaming of the cosmos, a tapestry of swirling nebulae and the gentle pulse of distant suns. The constellations, witnessing her hard-won peace, did not look away. They gathered their light, not in brilliant flashes, but in soft, soothing rays of silver and rose gold, which descended to envelop her sleeping form. This celestial balm seeped into her, gently repairing the strained muscles, soothing her raw throat, and calming the frantic echoes of chaos that still trembled in her spirit. Yet, even cradled in this healing light, a thread of anxiety wove through her dreams. She saw a mountain of letters piled high on her desk, their lights flickering with impatience. The worry threatened to claw her back to wakefulness, to pull her from this essential recovery. But then, in the quiet logic of her dream self, she made a conscious choice. She pictured the night zephyrs, now practiced and careful, sorting the mail with playful precision. She saw Flick and his family, their tiny lights zipping along the protected pathways. She remembered the strong, silent shield of the dream weavers. She let go, trusting the network she had built with her own courage and compassion. This surrender was its own kind of victory. Her trust was not misplaced. When she finally awoke, her mind was clear and her body hummed with renewed vitality. A soft chime of celestial bells drew her attention downward, toward the familiar pathways of the night. There, to her astonished delight, she saw the night zephyrs executing a complex, beautiful dance, weaving between constellations with envelopes, clasped securely in their airy hands. Not a single letter was out of place. Inspired by her example, they had managed the entire routine delivery cycle flawlessly, proving the entire system could not only survive but thrive in her absence. Refreshed and with a genuine smile gracing her lips for the first time in what felt like an age, Elara stepped back onto the moonbeam path. Her journey back to the Starglow Post Office was light with anticipation, each step filled with a quiet eagerness to see what new messages, what new stories, the night had woven in her rest. The familiar glow of the Starglow Post Office came into view, a warm and steady heartbeat against the vast night. Elara crossed the threshold, expecting the comforting chaos of her own domain, but she found something else entirely. The air was not frantic, but purposefully alive. A graceful river of letters flowed through the main hall, guided by the practiced swirls of the night zephyrs, while Flick and his family darted in precise formations, acting as swift couriers for the most urgent deliveries. The entire operation hummed with a smooth, self-sufficient rhythm she had never witnessed before. In her absence, they had not merely survived, they had evolved. A wave of immense pride washed over her, so powerful it brought a tear to her eye. This was the shared accomplishment she had fought for, a testament to the trust she had placed in them. Yet, for a single, sharp moment, a cold question pierced her heart. Was she still needed here? Had she worked herself out of a purpose? She watched the zephyrs execute a complex sorting maneuver with playful ease, and the cold doubt melted away, replaced by a warm, certain clarity. This was not her replacement, it was her legacy. She was not the sole operator anymore, she was their guide. Laughing with pure, unburdened joy, she waded into the bustling activity, her presence not a correction, but a celebration. She praised a zephyr for its elegant loop, and she high-fived a tiny firefly with the tip of her finger. The community she had nurtured now flourished around her, stronger and more resilient than she had ever dreamed. This new efficiency meant the Starglow Post Office could now handle a volume of celestial mail previously unimaginable, promising to weave the dreams of the world and the stories of the stars into an ever tighter tapestry. As she stood there, surveying her thriving, collaborative hub, a special, golden-hued letter descended slowly from the highest rafters, carried on silent wings by a majestic, wide-eyed owl, a direct message from the Council of the Eldest Stars. The owl's golden letter felt impossibly heavy in her hands, its surface cool and smooth as polished stone. Unfurling, it revealed a summons written in pure light, commanding her presence at the cosmic nexus for an audience with the Council of the Eldest Stars. This was not a request. It was a formal review of her every action during the comet's passing, a judgment on her worthiness to hold the title of Postmaster. The journey to the Nexus was a silent, breathless ascent through layers of reality until she stood in a vast amphitheater carved from the fabric of space-time itself. The council awaited, their forms not of stars, but of condensed history and ancient law, their gazes like gravity wells. Their voices, when they spoke, were the slow grinding of tectonic plates. They questioned her judgment with surgical precision. Why risk your singular existence for a handful of remote constellations? Was that not an emotional, reckless choice? And by involving the dream weavers, did you not make the celestial mail dependent on the fickle realm of dreams? Elara's heart hammered, but she stood straight, her voice clear and steady. She did not justify or defend. She explained. To leave one star unheard would have broken the trust that makes the entire network strong. She said, it was never about my safety, but about their faith. And the dream weavers are not a crutch, but an alliance. A post office that connects only the brightest and loudest is a failing one. True strength lies in weaving more threads into the tapestry, not in holding them all alone. She spoke with a humility that held the weight of unshakable conviction. For a long, silent moment, the council's luminous forms pulsed, considering her words. Then, the air in the nexus shifted, the stern pressure lifting into a warm, approving radiance. Her integrity had not just answered their questions, it had reframed them. In a voice that now held the warmth of a newborn sun, the council spoke a single, resonant phrase, bestowing upon her the eternal title of Keeper of the Celestial Mail. This was no temporary posting. It was a permanent sanctification of her role, a vow of unwavering support from the oldest powers in existence. The Starglow Post Office was now, and forever, a cornerstone of the cosmos. Carrying that new title like a shield of light, Elara descended back to Earth. The first soft hints of dawn were brushing the horizon with shades of lavender and rose, and the night's great work was finally, peacefully complete. The soft lavender of dawn began to bleed into the deep indigo of the retreating night. Elara stood at the open doorway of the Starglow Post Office, her hand resting on the frame as she watched the constellations slowly dim from brilliant silver to gentle, sleepy gray. The once bustling night air grew heavy and still, the last of the zephyrs settling into quiet curls of mist. It was time for the closing ritual, the final sacred duty of her day. A quiet anxiety fluttered in her chest, a fear that the profound connections forged under the starlight might fray and weaken in the harsh light of the sun. Would the trust she had earned from the dream weavers feel like a distant memory by noon? Yet she knew, deep in her bones, that the cycle was not an ending, but a promise of return. The magic of the night needed this rest to gather its strength anew, She took a deep, steadying breath and began. Her voice was soft but clear, carrying across the threshold. She thanked the steadfast North Star for its unwavering guidance, the playful Orion for his spirited lessons, and the gentle Lyra for its restored song. She whispered her gratitude to the swirling zephyrs for their newfound grace, to Flick and his brilliant family for their swift loyalty, and to the silent, watchful dream weavers for their enduring shield. With each word of thanks, she felt a corresponding pulse of warmth from the direction of each constellation and ally, a silent affirmation that the bonds were not weakening, but being carefully stored away like treasures in a vault, to be even stronger upon their next meeting. As she spoke the final syllable of the ancient sealing words, a soft, golden glow enveloped the entire post office. The building seemed to let out a contented sigh, its walls solidifying, its windows shimmering as they became opaque. All the remaining starlight energy was safely banked, the entire structure settling into a deep, restorative slumber, perfectly preserved until the sun dipped below the horizon once more. Her role was now secure, her purpose revered by the very fabric of the night. With the sky blushing a soft rose pink, Elara turned her back on the slumbering post office and walked the familiar path to her small, vine-covered cottage. Pushing the door open, she was greeted by the simple, comforting scents of wood and dried herbs. There, centered perfectly on her pillow, was a final, unexpected message. It was not a formal celestial letter, but a simple drawing on a piece of parchment, clearly made by a child's hand. It depicted a smiling girl under a sky filled with overly large, friendly stars, and one of them, she realized with a swelling heart, had her own face crudely but lovingly drawn upon it. This was the dream of the little girl whose wish had been frozen in the comet's tail, now delivered not to the stars, but directly to her. It was a thank you, a perfect human closure to a night of cosmic labor. The simple drawing on her pillow began to glow with a soft, warm light. As Elara picked it up, the image of the smiling girl under the friendly stars seemed to breathe, and the room filled with the gentle, joyful echo of a child's laughter and the feeling of a grandmother's warm embrace. This was not just a picture, it was the dream itself, the very one she had rescued from the comet's chaotic grip, now returned to her as a perfect token of gratitude. In that moment, every sacrifice, every terrified step on a trembling star path, every ounce of her spent energy felt profoundly and utterly worth it. A sob caught in her throat, followed by quiet tears that traced paths through the stardust on her cheeks. The immense weight of her responsibility, a burden she carried for the entire night sky, suddenly felt both crushing and beautiful. She could feel the hopes of countless dreamers in her hands, and the sheer volume of that trust was overwhelming. But as the joyful light from the drawing played across her face, she made a conscious choice. She would not let this weight bow her. She would let it anchor her. This small, human joy was the entire reason the Starglow Post Office existed. It was the fuel that would power her through countless nights to come. She found a small, empty crystal vial on her shelf, one that had once held a drop of morning dew. With reverent care, she folded the drawing and slipped it inside. The moment the parchment entered the crystal, the vial began to glow with a steady, gentle pulse, a tiny captured star of human happiness. She placed it on her windowsill, right where the first evening star would appear. It would be her nightly reminder, her compass pointing back to the simple, profound reason for all her cosmic efforts. As the sun finally broke fully over the horizon, washing her room in golden light, she lay down to sleep. Her dreams that day were not of comets or chaos, but of a peaceful, endless river of letters, each one glowing with contentment as they found their way home to the stars. The final echoes of the child's joyful dream faded from her cottage as Elara awoke to the soft purple of twilight. Her movements were fluid and practiced as she began the evening's preparations. She cleaned the star quills with a soft cloth, watching the last remnants of old ink dissolve into silver mist. She then carefully replenished the main inkwell from a vial of fresh liquid starlight, its surface swirling with captured nebulas. Unrolling the celestial delivery schedules, she integrated the new, more efficient pathways carved by the sailing ships, navigation, and solidified by the comet's passage. The entire Starglow Post Office seemed to breathe in tandem with her, humming to life with a vibrant, eager energy that made the very air buzz. Then a single letter fluttered onto her desk, its light timid and flickering uncertainly. It was from a new, shy constellation called the Little Dipper's cousin, and its address was written in a hesitant, looping script that trailed off into a question mark. The need for swift action was instantly replaced by a deeper need for patience. Elara set aside her busy work and selected a sheet of welcoming gold leaf parchment. She wrote a warm, clear guide letter, explaining the simple joys of sending and receiving mail, and included a blank practice sheet for their next attempt. This was not a delay, but an investment. Her act of welcome ensured the tiny constellation would find its voice and its place in the celestial community, strengthening the entire network by one more brave, twinkling point of light. As the first bold stars pierced the darkening blue, a familiar, playful zephyr spiraled into the room, dropping a bundle of letters onto her desk with a flourish. Among them, one envelope stood apart, woven from shifting, silken dream stuff, and sealed with the intricate, official emblem of the Dream Weavers. The Dream Weaver's letter unfolded on her desk, its silken surface shifting to reveal a proposal written in threads of pure potential. They offered to weave the most hopeful, beautiful dreams into special dream letters, messages Elara could then deliver directly to the sleeping minds of children on Earth. This was not merely an alliance, it was a fusion of two worlds, merging the physical pathways of celestial mail with the intimate, direct delivery of dreams. It promised a powerful new method for spreading joy and courage, a way to ensure the cosmos's most positive stories found a home in human hearts. But the offer came with a profound condition. To handle these delicate creations without damaging their essence, Elara would have to learn the basics of dream weaving herself. The art was notoriously subtle, demanding immense emotional control and perfect clarity of intent. Her first few attempts were dismal failures. Trying to channel a simple feeling of comfort into a coherent form, she instead produced a tangled, confusing snippet of a dream featuring a talking teapot that was also a grumpy mountain. The dream letter was a mess of conflicting imagery, utterly undeliverable and faintly ridiculous. Undeterred, Elara made a disciplined decision. She dedicated the first quiet hour of each night to practice, guided by a patient, formless envoy from the Dream Weavers. This envoy did not speak in words, but in gentle emotional prompts, teaching her to isolate a single, pure feeling, like the thrill of finding a four-leaf clover, and then build a narrative around it, stitch by careful stitch. She learned to pour her own calm into the weave, to smooth the edges of fear, and to highlight the core of a happy memory. The breakthrough, when it came, felt like a silent chime ringing through her soul. She successfully crafted a short, beautiful dream about a child learning to fly a kite with a friendly miniature cloud. The dream letter glowed in her hands, its story coherent, its emotion warm and steady. This single success officially launched the Starlight Dream Delivery Service, a branch of her work that expanded the impact of the post office beyond anything she had previously imagined. The first full batch of these new dream letters now sat in a special satchel, each one pulsing with a soft, unique light. Elara assigned them to her most trusted Firefly Messengers, who took the precious cargo with uncharacteristic solemnity. They zipped away into the darkening sky, their tiny bodies streaking through the twilight like living sparks of hope, carrying promises of joyful nights to children waiting in their beds. Through the great observatory window, Elara watched her Firefly Messengers descend like falling stars toward the slumbering world. They hovered over quiet homes, and as each dream letter dissolved into the air above a sleeping child, a gentle, happy smile would bloom on a small face. A soft, warm energy, the very essence of that newfound joy, rippled back through the night air, traveling all the way to the Starglow Post Office. The moment this positive wave washed through the main hall, the central lantern flared with renewed vigor, and every single waiting letter on her desk glowed a little brighter, their light steadier and more eager than before. But her attention was caught by one particular delivery. The dream letter, meant for a child plagued by nightmares, met an invisible wall of fear. Instead of being welcomed, it began to fray at the edges, its beautiful imagery of a friendly, guiding star starting to twist into a shapeless shadow. Elara did not hesitate. Closing her eyes, she placed her hands against the cool glass of the window and began to sing, the same soft, protective lullaby that had calmed the turbulent winds on her very first night. She poured her own calming energy, her unwavering belief in a peaceful night, directly through the cosmic connection. For a tense moment, the dream letter flickered, caught between her hope and the child's deep-seated fear. Then, with a final resonant pulse, the shadow dissolved. The child's tense expression softened into restful sleep, the nightmare transforming into a dream of safe, open skies. This was more than a delivery. It was a healing, proving her new service could actively mend the tears in the fabric of the night. Heartened by this profound victory, she turned back to her bustling desk, where the daily celestial mail awaited sorting. Her hand paused over a curious, unaddressed letter that glowed with an inner light so pure it seemed to be written in a language she had never seen. The unaddressed letter glowed on her desk, a small sun composed of shifting, prismatic light symbols. Elara reached for it, but her fingers passed through its substance as if through warm air. This was no ordinary message. It was a direct communication from the realm of pure light, a dimension of such fundamental energy that it rarely deigned to speak with the more tangible, stellar world. She watched, mesmerized, as the symbols morphed from elegant spirals into sharp geometric angles, their meaning slipping away each time she thought she understood. The other letters in the sorting room seemed to sense its significance, drifting to a halt and arranging themselves in quiet, concentric circles around the radiant message, their own gentle lights dimmed in a show of deep respect. The silence in the room was not empty, but full of a hushed and potent expectation. To read it, she realized with a sinking heart, she could not try to read it at all. The symbols were a reflection of her own inner state, a liquid mirror for her soul. When she felt a flicker of anxiety, the light twisted into warning signs. When curiosity sparked, it formed complex, unanswerable riddles. Her own turbulent emotions were the lock on this message, and the only key was a stillness she was not sure she could achieve. The fate of this first contact, this potential bridge to an entire new realm of existence, rested entirely on her ability to find a perfect and temporary peace. She closed her eyes, letting the busy sounds of the post office fade away. She breathed in the quiet and breathed out the weight of her duties, the memory of the comet, the fear of failure. She visualized her heart not as a pounding drum, but as a still pond, its surface smooth and undisturbed. It was the hardest work she had ever done, this conscious unraveling of her own self. Slowly, painstakingly, the churning thoughts settled. The frantic energy of responsibility softened into a quiet hum. In that achieved silence, she opened her eyes and looked again. The prismatic light had stabilized. The shifting symbols resolved into a single, sustained pattern, a simple and beautiful sequence that conveyed not complex data, but pure feeling. It was a greeting, an offer of friendship from a realm that had, until this moment, observed the stellar one from a silent, brilliant distance. A wave of profound warmth washed over her, the letter's intent now as clear as morning. They simply wished to say hello. The diplomatic implications were staggering. The Starglow Post Office's reach now extended beyond stars and dreams, into the very source of illumination itself. The potential for new kinds of mail, for messages woven from pure understanding and fundamental joy, was suddenly, wonderfully infinite. With a heart full of quiet gratitude, Elara began to craft her reply. She gathered threads of the gentlest starlight and wove them with her own palpable goodwill, creating a response that was itself a silent, radiant thank you. As she sent the shimmering answer on its journey into the unknown, a new sound graced the night. The constellation Lyra, having witnessed the entire silent exchange, began to play a new melody. It was a song of joyous discovery, its notes leaping and dancing in a celebration of a friendship newly forged between light and light. Lyra's new song began not as a melody you could hear, but as one you could feel, a vibration that hummed in the very bones of the night. The constellation, now a brilliant cascade of recovered music, had translated the silent greeting from the realm of pure light into a tangible composition called the Song of Connection. Its power was so immense that it physically etched itself across the heavens, a shimmering, luminous staff of musical notation woven from the fabric of starlight itself. Elara's new task was as monumental as it was beautiful. She had to deliver copies of this celestial sheet music, crystallized into tiny, humming fragments, to every musician constellation in the sky. The moment the first copy was placed into the hands of the great cosmic harp, the symphony began. It started with a single, resonant chord from Lyra, which was then answered by the deep, thrumming bass of the drummer Nebula. The sailing ship's stars chimed in with ringing bell tones, and even the silent, ancient turtle constellation, contributed a slow, profound rhythm like a heartbeat. Spontaneous, harmonious concerts erupted across the star fields, each constellation adding its unique voice, weaving a tapestry of sound that physically strengthened the bonds between them. The very star paths seemed to glow brighter and feel more solid underfoot. Yet this beautiful chaos created an unexpected crisis. The enchanting music was irresistible to the night zephyrs tasked with the day-to-day mail. They became so captivated by the melody that they abandoned their straight flight paths, whirling and dipping in ecstatic, uncoordinated dances. Letters meant for the little fox were spiraling toward the swan, and urgent messages were stuck in graceful, pointless loops. The efficient system Elara had built was on the verge of collapsing into a delightful but dysfunctional ballet. She watched the chaotic dance for a long moment, her initial frustration melting into a spark of inspiration. Instead of fighting the music, she would conduct it. She studied the song's core rhythm, identifying its pulsing, joyful beat, and began to redesign the delivery routes. She assigned each zephyr a specific musical phrase to follow, turning their flight into a coordinated, celestial waltz. A dip in the melody became the signal to descend toward the Southern Cross, while a rising crescendo guided them upward to the crown. The potential distraction was transformed into a new, highly efficient navigation system, filling the post office with synchronized, joyful motion. This decision elevated the Starglow Post Office into something far greater than a messenger service. The Universal Symphony became a permanent background feature of the night, its harmonious frequencies subtly reinforcing the stability of the celestial pathways and bringing an unprecedented clarity to the dream letters, which now arrived infused with the song's peaceful energy. As the symphony reached its final, breathtaking crescendo, every constellation in the sky pulsed in perfect, unified light, and from that collective, joyous moment, a single, brilliant letter of gratitude, woven from the combined light of every star, formed directly above the post office's roof, shimmering with her name. The letter of gratitude descended like a captured constellation, a warm, living orb of intertwined starlight that settled gently into Elara's waiting palms. It pulsed with a rhythm that was both alien and deeply familiar, a symphony of a billion tiny lights, representing every star that had ever trusted her with a dream. Holding it, she was flooded with a sense of belonging so profound it stole her breath. This was the heart of the night sky, and it was being offered to her. For a terrifying moment, the sheer intensity of the collective emotion felt like a crushing weight. A whisper of her old fear returned, the chilling doubt that she, a solitary human, was not worthy of such a cosmic gift. She felt the orb's immense power pressing against her own fragile spirit, threatening to overwhelm her completely. But then she looked out at the peacefully twinkling constellations, at the harmonious dance of the zephyrs, and she understood. This was not a burden to be carried alone. It was a shared joy, a culmination of every connection she had fought to build. She made a choice, a conscious and final surrender. She opened her heart completely, letting go of all her lingering fears of inadequacy, and accepted the gratitude not as a reward, but as a partnership. The moment she did, the warm orb did not vanish or shrink. It flowed seamlessly into her chest, merging with her own heartbeat and becoming a permanent, gentle light glowing within her. A new, intuitive understanding of the celestial network bloomed in her mind. She could feel the subtle shifts in stellar winds before they happened, sense the quiet melancholy of a distant star before it ever sent a letter, and understand the complex language of the cosmos, not as words, but as pure feeling. She was no longer just the postmaster of Starglow. She had become a true celestial guardian, a living bridge between the dreaming world and the stars, her every action now infused with the combined strength and hope of the entire night sky. With the new light glowing softly from within, she looked out at the peaceful, harmonious heavens, knowing the dawn was near and another perfect night of service was complete. The final delivery of the night arrived not as a letter, but as a silent, contained dawn. Cradled in a sphere of crystallized light was the seed of a new constellation, a gift from the realm of pure light. It pulsed with a potential so fragile that the weight of a single stray thought could crush it. Her task was to carry it across the last, thinning star path to a specific patch of absolute void, a place where the fabric of the night was so still that a new star could be born without echo or interference. But the path itself was fraying at the edges, its silver threads dissolving into mist as the approaching sun pulled at the seams of the sky. The void around the path was not empty. It whispered with the ghosts of forgotten stories and the chill of ancient, cosmic fears, each one a pressure against her resolve. There was no one to help her here, no zephyr or firefly that could follow. This journey was hers alone. She stepped onto the disintegrating bridge, her feet finding purchase on the fading light. With each step, the path behind her vanished into a soft, gray nothingness, a silent countdown to the dawn. The void's whispers grew louder, probing for doubt, for a flicker of the old anxiety that had once plagued her. "You are just a postmaster," they murmured. "This is too great a burden for one human," but Elara did not falter. She focused on the warm, steady light glowing within her own chest, the combined gratitude of the stars. She let that inner luminescence flow down her arms and into her hands, creating a protective cocoon around the precious seed. Her own hope became its shield. She was no longer the novice who had trembled on her first delivery. Every challenge, from the comet's chaos to the silent judgment of the council, had forged her into this confident keeper of cosmic connections. The path thinned to a mere filament of light, a single thread over an infinite drop. She walked it with a perfect, balanced grace, her gaze fixed on the destination, a pool of profound stillness ahead. Reaching the planting site, she knelt, the void itself holding its breath. There were no grand gestures, no shouted words. With a final, focused breath that carried all her trust in the night, she placed the seed into the waiting darkness. For a heartbeat, there was only silence. Then the seed ignited. It did not simply brighten. It blossomed, unfolding from a point of potential into a brilliant, newborn star. Its first light was a clean, sharp silver that pushed back the whispering fears and filled the void with a gentle, welcoming warmth. And then, as if recognizing its creator, the star twitched in a specific, joyful rhythm. It twinkled a message of thanks, a simple sequence of pulses that echoed directly into her heart. In that moment, her legacy was sealed. She was the heart of the night's communications, the fixed point around which the dance of stars and dreams revolved. As the star settled into its new home, the sun's first golden rays finally crested the horizon and the Starglow Post Office. its work complete for another cycle, sighed contentedly, and sealed its doors. The door of the Starglow Post Office sealed with a soft, final click, a sound that felt less like an ending and more like a promise. Inside, the silence was not empty, but rich with the echoes of a night's fulfilled purpose, a quiet hum of contentment that settled deep into the very walls. Elara stood for a moment, her hand resting on the warm wood, feeling the gentle pulse of the celestial light now glowing within her own chest. It was a steady, comforting rhythm, the combined heartbeat of every star she served. The once lonely North Star no longer shone with solitary resolve. Far above, it now sparkled in a gentle, perpetual dance with the newborn star she had planted, their twin lights weaving a new pattern of companionship into the fabric of the sky. The entire cosmos resonated with Lyra's song of connection, a harmonious backdrop that strengthened the pathways for every dream letter and celestial message. Children everywhere were receiving those carefully woven dreams, their peaceful smiles a silent, powerful fuel for the entire system. Elara had indeed mastered the delivery of letters, but her true achievement was far greater. She had become a weaver of unity itself, her own human story, now an inseparable thread in the eternal, whimsical tale of the night. Walking to her small cottage as the world brightened with dawn, she felt a profound and simple clarity. Her purpose was no longer a question to be answered, but a truth to be lived with every sunset. She lay down to sleep, and her dreams were not of comets or cosmic councils, but of a vast, peaceful sky, forever connected by a network of light and trust. She slept deeply, peacefully, knowing with absolute certainty that when the sun dipped below the horizon once more, the constellations and the whispering night air would be waiting. And the endless, beautiful cycle of connection would begin again, stronger and more magical than ever before. you.